I've been on both sides of that buyer's dilemma where you see a cheap DTF printer on a marketplace. You think you're saving a few $100, and then a week later you're staring at a jammed film roll and a printer that refuses to print the colors you promised a client. That regret feels a lot worse when you've already spent time setting up a shop and the equipment lets you down. So the question I keep hearing is, does the WJTZXY A3++ XP600 actually feel like a smarter buy? Or is it just another budgetish promise that will bite you later? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first saw the WJTZXY A3++, I was skeptical because the DTF market is crowded with low-cost machines that cut corners on ink delivery and drying. I dug through a handful of forums, watched a few unboxing videos, and even talked to a couple of small business owners who had tried both the entry-level models and the more expensive industrial units. The consensus was clear. You need a printer that can handle A3+ film without constant manual intervention, and you need a dryer that actually dries the ink without scorching the film. That's the sweet spot the XP600 claims to hit, and it's worth testing against the real-world workflow of a t-shirt printing shop. First off, the footprint of this printer is something you'll notice right away. It sits comfortably on a standard workbench, roughly the size of a medium desktop scanner, so you don't need a dedicated room just to house it. The built-in shaking dryer is attached at the rear, which means you don't have to buy a separate drying cabinet. In practice, that saves space and reduces the number of power cords you have to manage. When you load a roll of PET film, the feeder mechanism pulls it straight into the print head, and the shaking dryer starts vibrating as soon as the head lifts off. The vibration helps spread the freshly printed ink evenly before it hits the heat element, which is a small but noticeable improvement over the static drying you see on some other models. From a day-to-day usability standpoint, the biggest win is the software integration. The printer comes with a driver that plugs into most popular RIP software without a lot of extra tweaking. I tried it with both a free open-source RIP and a paid commercial option, and in both cases the printer accepted the file, printed the design, and handed the film off to the dryer with just a couple of clicks. That matters because you're not spending half the day fiddling with color profiles or fighting driver errors. The printing speed is respectable for an A3+ machine, around 8 to 10 minutes per full-color design on a standard 30 cm 40 cm print, so it can keep up with a modest production schedule without making you feel rushed. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths. Ink consumption is one area where the XP600 feels efficient. The printer uses a 6-color DTF ink set, and the cartridges are refillable. In my test runs, a single 500 milliliters black cartridge lasted for roughly 200 full-size prints, which translates to a cost per print that sits comfortably in the middle of the market. The refillable design also means you're not locked into proprietary cartridges that can inflate your running costs. Another strength is the consistency of the drying process. Because the dryer shakes, you get fewer instances of ink pooling on the film, which reduces the chance of ghosting on the final transfer. That consistency becomes especially valuable when you're printing designs that have fine gradients or multiple overlapping colors. No machine is without its trade-offs, and the XP600 has a few that you should be aware of before you click buy. The first is the learning curve around film tension. The feeder uses a rubber roller that can be a little finicky if the film roll isn't perfectly aligned. I found that after the first couple of prints, I had to pause and recenter the roll, otherwise the printer would start pulling the film unevenly, leading to slight skew in the output. It's not a deal breaker, but it does add a small step to the workflow, especially if you're changing rolls frequently. The second weakness is the heat element's temperature range. The dryer tops out at about 160 C, which is sufficient for most DTF inks. But if you're using a brand of ink that calls for higher curing temperatures, you'll have to let the printed film sit a bit longer or use an external heat press to finish the job. That extra step can slow you down if you're trying to push out large batches. Who should consider buying the WJTZXY A3++ XP600? If you're a small to medium t-shirt printing business that needs reliable A3+ output without investing in a full-scale industrial setup, this printer hits a sweet spot. Its compact size, integrated dryer, and refillable ink system make it a practical choice for shop owners who want to keep overhead low while still delivering quality prints. It also works well for hobbyists who have outgrown the tiny 20 cm 30 cm DTF machines, but